Oh, welcome everybody. Hi, Billy. Great to see you. Welcome to Creator Sessions. Creator Sessions is a weekly series that we host at Disco, where we bring together some of the world's most exceptional thought leaders, creators, and experts who are all super passionate and excited about where the future of learning is headed. And so it is incredibly exciting for me today to introduce our guest. Our guest is Billy Broas. Hey, Billy, nice to see you.
Hey, Candace, great to see you and excited to be here.
Awesome. For those of you who don't know Billy Broas, I found him really early into my course journey. He was somebody who just hit like a really special note with me. And the reason for that is he is really expert at helping course creators create incredibly powerful messaging and marketing. And specifically, his specialty is really live and cohort-based courses, which we at Disco are really excited about building a platform for. And so, it is incredibly exciting to have Billy here. He's also helped some of the creators that we've had on the series. David Perell is an example, and somebody I deeply admire, Tiago Forte, with this very issue, which is their messaging and marketing. And so just so excited to have you here and for our audience to be able to ask you questions and learn from you. How are you doing today, Billy?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm excited for this. Yeah, I love to talk about this stuff, as you're going to see. Marketing and online education, where those two come together, I can talk for days. So yeah, let's do this.
Let's do this. Amazing. So, what's so cool about the way in which you approach this is you don't make it complicated. In fact, I think that's the one thing I've loved the most is you take this thing that seems like incredibly complex and you're like, actually, simplicity is key. Can you kind of maybe let's start there. Why and how are you able to take this very, very complicated topic and make this super simple?
Yeah, complication just stresses me out. I just, in general, like in my life, I like things very simple, very much a minimalist. I don't like a lot of moving parts to things. I learned that I like the DIY thing. We'll probably talk about how I was into brewing beer for a long time. And I realized like even with that, if you complicate it too much, the equipment and the process that you use, when there's a lot of moving parts, things tend to break down. And if you just keep it really simple and just focus on the essentials, you can make much further and quicker improvement that way. So yeah, it's the same thing really with marketing. And I mean, it comes down to speaking with a lot of people in this industry who are trying to make it, who are trying to get an online course business to work, for example, and seeing where they were getting stuck and also where I was getting stuck when I was running my courses. And they get stuck on the tactics, they get stuck on the complication because there's so much of that, the tactics, the technology. And when you do that, you can't focus on what's essential, which for me, we'll talk about it, are big things like messaging and relationship building.
I love it. But you just said something so important, right? It's like we get so stuck in the weeds that we kind of forget the higher level, right? Of
Yeah.
why we're even doing this and who we're doing it for. But before we even go there, I'm so fascinated by how you got into this space and how you became this incredibly expert marketer that you are. I think it has to do with beer. Is that
Yeah, it
is
does.
that a fair lead in?
It does involve beer. And I will say that thank you for the kind words. I'm always a student. I am still learning. I never assume to know it all. I'm very much a student of marketing, and it's fun. It's something you can explore endlessly. But yeah, I've had a good amount of experience now, and it started with beer, craft beer, because I had what I call a normal job for a while, and I was working in the clean energy industry, so doing something completely different than what I'm doing now. But it was a small company and growth was limited. I had that entrepreneurial itch. So I said, well, let me try something on the side, a side hustle to do my own thing. And so I started a beer blog, and that eventually turned into selling home beer brewing courses because I was really big into brewing beer at the time. And yeah, that took off. I'm very grateful that caught on. I was able to
That's
leave that
amazing.
job Yeah, and then that led me to where I am now, helping out other course creators.
I love that. And so beer led you to good places, it sounds. What's interesting is you did that quite a while ago. Was that, remind me again, when did you run that course?
Let's see. Well, there was overlap. I was doing it on the side when I had my career. I started it, the very first thing I ever did for that was 2008, 2009. I sold my first course in 2010. So there's a good lesson too. It took a little time to get that thing off the ground, to learn. I knew nothing about online marketing, building websites, any of that. Had to learn it all. So 2010, I sold my first course and then moved on from the site. It has a new owner now in 2017.
Okay. So the course landscape has changed so much since then.
Yep.
And, one of the things that you're really, really good at, and it feels like you were ahead of this, early, was the notion of cohort-based live courses. When did you sort of realize that that's actually, a really great way to develop a learning experience?
I really didn't. It was sort of by accident that I stumbled into it. It wasn't like I was thinking ahead, like, oh man, this is the direction everything is going.
This is the future.
Yeah, I wish I was. I wish I was that omnipotent. But no, I was. So I was running the beer brewing courses, and I developed a number of them, but they were all evergreen. They were all passive. Go through it on your own schedule, and no real live components to it. Maybe a Facebook group. And then I came out with this. So I was coming out with a new course, one I was really excited about, which was a beer tasting course. So rather than brew your own beer, this was
Cool.
because it was targeting home beer brewers, because the idea is the better you can critique your beer and analyze it, the better you can improve it. Right. So you have that feedback.
Totally.
It's really important for home brewers to have developed palates. And I said, okay, we need a course on this. But then I said, well, we're drinking beer here. Like, this is a fun thing. It's a social thing. And we're not going to do this passively, asynchronously. We got to get together live. We got to do this together.
Love
Like we're at the bar, except we're all over the world. And luckily, technology had gotten to the point where webinars were now a thing. And although I was using them on the front end, for the promoting the courses,
Sure.
I wasn't using them for delivery because Zoom wasn't really around yet. But I said, well, why can't I do that? Why can't I just fire up Webinar Jam and deliver a course through it? So I did. And we had people from all over the world. We had a menu of beers. So we're all drinking the same thing at the same time. I took them through a 4-week program. We meet once a week, drink the beer, talk about it, take notes on it, geek out on it. And yeah, that's how I stumbled into this idea of live teaching. And not that I was the first, but that's where it really resonated for me. And I said, oh, wow, there's something to this.
Well, I just love that. I mean, you are a pioneer, right? If you think about the pandemic, right? The pandemic caused everybody to have that moment of like, I can't go do this at a bar. I can't actually socialize in person. So of course, like that in the pandemic, made sense. But in 2017, it was really ahead of its time. And so 14, there you go. So I just think that's awesome. And I love the fact that you mentioned a couple things. One, that it's really important to have feedback, right? And to actually have a peer group and do stuff, live and synchronously in order for that experience to be special. So I want to dive into what you're really, really amazing at. And that is, in my mind, messaging. And, when I've read your emails, you just have this way, like you have this very authentic way around your messaging. And I've seen some of the work you've done. Tell us more. What is great messaging? How do course creators who are thinking about their messaging approach it?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I'm just really fascinated by language. I was that Latin nerd in high school that really liked to deconstruct and see what was going on there. And I love fiction. I love storytelling. And yeah, that's really been the not so secret to the whole thing, is that it's really communication. And like you said, Billy, you have this authentic way of communicating. And it's funny because we can all be authentic. Like it's not hard. All we need to do is just be ourselves, speak our truth. And it's hard because it can feel uncomfortable. That's what I've discovered. So in this communication, largely via email is what we use, it can be uncomfortable for people to speak in that human, authentic voice and let their personality shine through. It takes some practice to get used to. And so what happens is often these emails come off as sounding not so much like a person. It sounds more like a company that's speaking, or a brand. And people want to buy from other people. They want to buy from other humans, especially in this online course world, and especially with these cohort-based courses, something more immersive, something with more hand-holding. You're going to be working with that person, that instructor, very closely. And so you, as the instructor or the product creator, you want to develop that bond early on through your messaging with your prospects, your audience, so that they get to know you and they're like, okay, yeah, I want to be with that person inside their program. So that's really been the key to the whole thing.
I love what you're saying. And it's so true, especially in cohort-based and live courses, which are all about the people showing up. And so, I've seen you have some really interesting thoughts on sort of do's and don'ts when it comes to messaging. Can you share, what a couple of the common mistakes are that people make? I mean, I think you hit on a couple, but maybe there's a few more. And then even more importantly, what should you do to have that authentic messaging come through?
Yeah. So messaging is really your core messaging. It has to start with that. And the mistake I see people make is that they start with the tactics. So, and I get why, because most of the ads that you see are, promoting things like ads. Like, you're only one funnel away. That's a message that's out there right now. So the tactic is that funnel, as if the funnel is the key, the sales funnel. And frankly, they're overrated in terms of their importance, because it's not so much the funnel, that's just the tactic. It's what you say in that funnel. Facebook ads, right? That's a tactic. And a lot of people say, well, what's the key to growing my course? Is it Facebook ads? And that's really the wrong question to ask. It's, what do we say in those Facebook ads? So the core messaging, it trickles through to all those tactics, to the Facebook ads, to your blogging, to your Twitter, to your YouTube, to the podcast, even video. It starts with writing. It starts with getting your message down. So that's the biggest piece of advice that I can give, is to prioritize messaging in your efforts to growing your course business.
I think that's super helpful. And I think what, maybe the audience needs in this conversation is give us some examples, right? What is an example? I know you've worked with Tiago Forte, who does an amazing live course, or David Perell, or some other creators. Where was their messaging off, or not really authentic? And what did you do to actually make it come to life and not be so focused on just the tactics?
Yeah. So two things. So the two things are, one, compelling messaging, and then two, being authentic. And I'll talk about them in that order. So the first thing is having compelling messaging. And by that, I mean, you need to make people a strong promise. So you need to promise an outcome for them with these online courses. Especially these more high-end ones, these more premium ones. It's a big investment. It's a big investment of time. There's a lot of hours that it takes to consume. If you think about it this way, it takes a lot of hours to consume this product of an online course. It's a big investment for people. This is not like an iPhone case, right? How much time do you invest in that product? You pop it on your iPhone and that's it. You forget about it, right? So you need to think about it that way, and what they are going to get at the end of it, because you need to answer that question for them. What's in it for me? So a mistake a lot of course creators make, and the mistake Tiago is making, we all have the curse of knowledge, right? So we tend to focus on our feature. And so for him, it was productivity, but it's about what productivity can do for you. And for him, it's, one, having everything nice and organized, having a system. And he has a very popular system he calls Para. You can look that up, P-A-R-A, for doing that. But even larger than that, it's about his crowd taking all the information they consume and synthesizing it, remixing it, having creative ideas spring out of that, and then publishing great works based off of that: essays, podcasts, even movies. So you want to promise that compelling outcome for people.
That is so powerful, because I think where we get stuck is we're so in our own world about what we're doing and offering that we're not thinking about the impact of what that's going to have, the transformation that's going to have, or the outcome on people's lives. And so when you think about messaging from a marketing perspective, walk us through sort of how do you put that into practice, right? Is it through long emails? Is it through, tell us how do you get from, okay, now I know that the messaging needs to be outcome focused, but how do I make that actually come to life for my course marketing?
Yeah, so in terms of tactics, well, there's this famous phrase in copywriting, I forget exactly who said it, but they said, start with the sales page. Even before making your product, write the sales page before even coming up with a product. And there's a lot of wisdom in that if you think about it, because if you get that right, then that's the thing that they really want, right? Like there's this other saying that you want to find products for your customers, not customers for your product. So start with who you want to help, find, and then talk to them, figure out what they're struggling with, and then find that solution to that problem. That solution goes up on your sales page, because that's the point, that's where the rubber meets the road, right? To purchase that product, that course, for money to get into your bank account, they have to go through that sales page. That's the final step. So start there. And then it's a matter of how do we get people there? And for us, the core tactic is email marketing. And we can go into why that is, but I would get that, like that's certainly the core of these businesses that I'm working with is that email list. And then from there, you can layer on and you can test out different things. So for example, you might test out YouTube. And if you're more of a video person, YouTube might be a good fit for you. And if you're people like watching video, if you're more of a writer like Tiago and a reader like his audience, you might go to a blog. So yeah, start with the core messaging, and then I would get an email list going and then test out different traffic sources from there.
Super helpful. And on the email marketing that you're mentioning, tell us a little bit more around why email. I know you're super passionate about email, and we are too, by the way, at Disco. Like our belief is that creators need to own their audience. And email is a great way to do that. But maybe I'd love to hear why for you is email the most effective in being able to get people to convert?
Yeah, I'd say two big reasons, and you named one of them, the idea that you own that email list. So you can get shut down on YouTube or all these different platforms. You're building on their platform. You don't own that. Your email list, you can always export that CSV file of email addresses and take it with you. I have a presentation where I teach this, and I have a stock photo of someone with a briefcase with the handcuff connected to it. It's like your email list is in that briefcase, and you do not let go of that. And even if your email service provider goes out of business, you can take that email list and go to a different one. You can't do that with your Twitter followers. So that's one reason. The bigger one to me is because of the messaging and relationship building. It's the closest thing that we have digitally to sending a letter to a friend in a mail. And so you can send these short, sweet messages to people like you're writing a friend, and it's just a phenomenal way to build that relationship. But a lot of people don't think about email that way. And that's my biggest piece of advice here is you really have to change your mindset towards email. And you want to look at it like you're writing a letter to a friend or someone that you care for, that you want the best for, and you're passing on sage advice to them. Because likely if you're teaching an online course, you have experience in your field, hopefully, right? And so what you want to do is be sort of that guide that tells those lessons, teaches those lessons and tells those stories to your audience.
Okay, so your emails are amazing. And so for the people who are haven't read your emails yet, first of all, you can go to billybroas.com. Is that right? Billy Broas, BROAS.com to sign up for Billy's newsletter. But can you give some examples? Because I think what you're saying is so important, which is people are afraid to tell stories and talk to people like friends. And so can you give some examples of how you've done that or how you've seen people do that successfully?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So a big thing that I realized, especially with online courses, is that You want to, this is a good thing to walk away with. You want to think about yourself more as a guidance counselor than a teacher. So a lot of course creators, their free content will be very heavy on the how-to, on the tutorials.
Mm-hmm.
But people tend to get lost in that. And it's a lot of information for them. We just tend to pile on information and information. That's not really what people are looking for. They're really looking more for clarity, for guidance, and whatever that end outcome is that they want, if we're going back to what that end outcome is. So those tutorials and what you provide is just a means to that end. So you want to speak with that end in mind and provide them with sage advice on how to get there. Yeah, so an example is, I'll give you one from my beer brewing course. Okay, so I was doing this, the beer tasting class, and I was trying to get across the point that it's really important to critique your beer, to be able to analyze it. So I used this example from a homebrew tasting or a competition that I was judging. And I told this story about how I critiqued this beer, and I gave this homebrewer this advice. And I said, hey, you're using this ingredient, but I think it would be a lot better with this one. And to most of my audience, that's not a skill set that they knew that they had to have. They thought that the answer was, well, I just need fancier equipment. I just need a shinier brew kettle, right?
Right.
It's kind of like in photography. A lot of people think, because I've worked in that market, that it's about your camera and how expensive it is. But really, it's about how you see as a photographer. And so what you want to do in these emails is kind of like I did. You want to tell stories, because there's lessons in stories, key lessons. And those lessons, how to think about things, is more important than the tips and tutorials and how to, because we've all read like 50 those blog posts, 50 tips on how to grow your online business. Like, how many of those do you actually use? So getting the right mindset is the most important thing.
That's amazing. I mean, my background is in the storytelling world. I before we created Disco, I built a platform for people to tell stories on called Wattpad. And you're bringing up something so important, which is people ultimately remember stories because there is an emotional connection to what that story is versus just facts, right? Or just the how-tos. And I think, that's what's so compelling about your work and some of the case studies around how you've helped. David Perell is someone we've interviewed, and we just think he's done an amazing job in really putting together a program that's transformative. Tell us more about, where was David going wrong on the storytelling front and on the messaging, and how did you help him improve in that way?
Yeah, and this gets more into what I was going to say about authenticity. So we're just too close to it. We're the ones living our lives, and to us, a lot of the stuff that's mundane is actually really what makes us unique and special. So that's what I mean about being authentic is both easy and hard. It's easy in the sense that you don't have to figure it out. You just really speak your truth and you tell your story. It's already there. There's nothing to search for, but it can be hard to see it. And then when you see it, there can be resistance to telling your story, because it requires you to be a bit vulnerable, and that can be difficult to do online. So with David, it was really just a matter of telling his story. And all I did was just pull that out of him. So for example, he teaches writing, but he wasn't a great writer in high school, and he doesn't like the approach to teaching writing in high school with the red marker and focusing on grammar and like having like the perfect structure of your paragraphs. He looks at writing as a way to grow your influence and your authority and your network online, and to build what he calls a personal monopoly, which is essentially, it's like a niche that you own, where two of your interests intersect and you become known for that intersection. And that's a bigger idea than just writing, right? So that was the thing, is telling that story from him and then connecting it to his why, because that's why he writes. And then all we had to do was figure out the best way to say that. And there's tons of tactics, right? That's where the email marketing comes into play, Twitter, but it was getting that core messaging in place first. That was really the key to growing David's business. And the guy's just brilliant, and he's super young. He's still in his mid-20s. So yeah, I have a lot of respect for David, and great guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Super smart. And I think what you say is really powerful, which is we're often really vulnerable when we're telling our stories of why we're doing the work around what we're doing. And sometimes we need just somebody else to see it and also create the conditions for us to feel comfortable sharing. And so, Billy, is there a framework that you have that helps people with their messaging or with getting to those insights that you want to share?
A framework to getting to the insights. Well, again, it's in you. Those stories are in you. And I like what you said, to talk about why you're doing what you're doing and the backstory behind it. And a lot of people need to tell that story more. And so if you're having trouble finding that, tapping into that, yeah, a coach can certainly help you, bring it out of you. If you're not a writer, what you might do is, and we found this to work pretty well, is to speak. So you might answer a prompt and speak it and record that, maybe even transcribe it and get your stories that way. So yeah, whatever you can do. But I think usually people know, and it's just a matter of, okay, let's take that baby step. Let me be a little bit more vulnerable. Let me tell one personal story in an email, because it's a little bit scary. And then that will resonate with people, and you'll see that positive reaction, and get the courage and confidence to maybe go a little step further and tell more of your story. That's my advice.
I love that. Billy, I know you run a very high-end accelerator called Keystone. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I know for some people that may be aspirational right now, and you are working their way there, but I think it's super interesting to understand what happens in the accelerator and how you help some of the creators with these courses.
Yeah. So that is a collaboration with Tiago Forte, client and now business partner, and a good friend too. And so it's essentially for people like him, where I met him, where and he has a very successful online course called Building a Second Brain. And I took that as a student. I didn't know him at all. And I was in his second cohort, and he's now on 13 or 14. And then we connected a couple years down the road. And I said to him essentially, hey, you got a great thing here, but we need to get a few pieces in place, like these core messaging components. Email marketing was a big thing. So he had traction already. And we accelerated what he was doing, because it was all the pieces were there. We just had to put them together. So Keystone is how we find more people like him who have that traction. They have something really good that they're delivering to the world. They have this audience. They have all the pieces. We help them put it in place and just accelerate them, because we want to see more of these great online course businesses reach the people that they can help.
Absolutely. And is that a live cohort-based course as well?
Not in the sense, it's more of a business training program and advisory. It's not a CBC like I would say Tiago's is, which is really more like a live event. But it kind of depends on how you define these things, right? There's a lot of people running cohort-based courses that have never heard of that term, cohort-based course.
For sure. Absolutely. So we have some amazing questions that our audience is starting to ask us, and I want to make sure we have lots of time for people to ask you. I know there's a lot of interest in asking you questions. So this one's from Stephen Keltz, and his question is, your beer tasting example suggests that an interactive component helps the synchronous coursework. Have you seen examples of this fail? And if, say, the participants are asked to do something a little less fun than tasting beer? So, really asking about the interaction in synchronous. When has it worked? When hasn't it?
Well, obviously this thing is taking off, this cohort-based course idea. And so a little more of that backstory, I did that and I was like, oh, this is a cool thing. We're teaching live. Didn't see anyone else doing it until I took Tiago's course, which he taught live. And he did it on a whole another level than what I was doing. And so what we're seeing really is that it's a better product. And maybe I shouldn't say better, but it's a different product that a lot of people want. And it's possible now because of things like what we're doing here with Zoom. And so you're seeing higher completion rates. You're seeing more referrals from students who do well and then tell their friends, which brings in more revenue. So I'm not saying it's the end all be all. I think there's a place for asynchronous, for self-paced, maybe even a hybrid model. But it's a great type of product to be delivering right now, and people are asking
for sure. Super helpful. And Jay asked, can you talk about strategies to get people to pay for your courses? So, I think this is such an interesting topic. For example, he says, do you do free seminars? Do they have to be live or recorded? How long are courses? How do you convince them to take the course after the free seminar? And this is a really interesting topic, the free to pay journey, and would love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I would say there are some questions about tactics in there, not as important as getting that promise in place, what we call the offer. And there have been a lot of studies on this in this industry, which is not just online courses. It's direct response marketing. It's selling information-based products. And the two most important things are the people you're talking to, the list, and also your offer. And if you get that right, you can sell that with just a sales page, or not even that, just over email even. So you want to find that traction first. And that's why I recommend, don't jump right into doing a webinar. Like, have conversations with people, maybe do some consulting for some small groups. You really want to validate the thing that you're selling, and there should be palpable demand for it, where people are like, I need that. And then only then go into the things like, you'll have to test different things, webinars, email, we always recommend, YouTube, things like that. But that's the key thing. Again, core messaging, what is that promise you're making? And then relationship building and following up. It's very boring. It's not very sexy, but our key to success is really just staying in frequent touch via email. And eventually when people are ready to buy, they know where to find us. That's it.
Super helpful. I have a question on that, which is, I know how often do you email your list, and do you think about fatigue, right? Are you worried about churn, or is it actually, the more the better, as long as you're engaging?
Yeah. And again, I know there's a lot of resistance around this idea, but you will find that the more frequent you are, and if you want a number, I say at least once a week. Got to keep in touch at least once a week. You have to build a lot of trust, and you build trust through familiarity. So if you're only popping into their inbox once every few months, you're kind of like that relative who you only see at a Thanksgiving every 3 years. It's like, you don't feel very connected to that person. Like, who are you? You're a stranger. And then in our example, it's a stranger who wants to sell you something. So don't be in that position where when you need to make a sale, you haven't talked to your audience in a few months, you're only popping into the inbox because you want to sell something. You want them to be used to hearing from you. And then it's just a natural transition into your launch or your pitch or whatever. So yeah, I often say that emailing frequently is the best list hygiene you can do, because the wrong people will get off your list. And I have no problem with unsubscribes, because I look at it like, okay, I'm not the right person for them. But the people who do stay on are going to be really warm, and they're going to be pre-sold before you even open the doors. And that's what we tend to see. Those are the responses that we get is, hey, I'm ready to join, even though you're not open yet. Take my money.
I love that. And one of the things you talk about is the difference between launching a course and announcing a course. Yeah. Can you kind of explain to people sort of what the strategy is there, how they should think about when and how to launch versus announce?
Yeah, so a lot of people, when their course is ready, again, they haven't communicated with their list in a while. So the first email that prospect gets is, hey, doors are open. And again, it's the curse of knowledge, because we're so close to it. We expect that everyone knows what we're doing and who we are and what we're up to, but they don't. So you want to treat the launch like an event, and you want to have build up to it. You want to seed it. You want to talk about behind the scenes, what's going on, kind of like they do when there's a blockbuster movie coming out. They talk about what's happening on the set, right? So seeding that idea, and also providing value, helping guide people. You want to think about yourself as a decision coach. Like, you're helping coach them on making the right decision for them, whether that's buying your course or not buying your course. And you should tell them when it's not a good fit for them. So that all takes place during that launch process, where, yeah, there's a string of communication that goes out. And then once they're educated on the right decision for them, and they know the best decision for them, only now do you open your doors, because they're ready to buy, or it's not a good fit for them, not buy. So you lead with the customer in the communication, not with announcing your product.
That is super helpful. And is this related to something you call the chain of beliefs?
Yeah, it's related to that. Yeah, so that's an idea. So the chain of beliefs, it comes from the classic advertising world. So it's decades old. There's different terms for it, points of belief, ladder of beliefs. And as copywriters tend to do, they over dramatize things. So it sounds like this, oh, change their beliefs, but it's pretty simple. So the idea is, well, to use an example that's commonly put out there, if you're selling carpet cleaning services in your hometown to a household, to a family, you can give them the biggest discount in the world, someone who has a carpet. But if they just think, all you need to do is vacuum every now and then, you don't need to actually clean your carpets. It's not a big deal. It doesn't matter how much you discount your services. They're just not going to accept that offer. So what you want to do is educate them, and you want to talk about things like, yeah, this is how dirty they can get. And they're actually one of the leading causes of asthma, which is true. And so you want to focus your marketing, not so much on pitching your offer, but on educating them around your offer. And those are the beliefs. So the belief there would be, oh, wow, you can actually get sick if you don't professionally clean your carpets frequently enough. And most course creators don't spend enough time on that side of things. Like with Tiago, we talk a lot about digital note taking, because that's a big part of what he provides. We talk about the benefits of taking notes and all the cool things you can do with that. And if they buy into that and they realize that, oh, wow, you can do a lot with this, the course is the natural next step. But if we lead with the course, they're going to be like, how can this help me? So it's really selling the why behind it. That's the points of belief idea.
Yeah, if that is such a big takeaway, which is, if you're going to do this, it is focused on the customer's why, not what you're selling, right? It's ultimately why they should care. And I think that's so important. The question that a lot of creators ask is, do you mention that you have a course when you're, writing these emails leading up to it? Like, how explicit are you leading up to a launch of a course, that a course is coming, versus actually just talking about what matters to your audience, and then at the end sharing, oh, by the way, I'm going to be doing this course?
Oh, they totally know. Yeah, it's not a bait and switch or anything. But keep in mind, the companies I work with who do this, we're following the same email marketing strategy where we're in frequent communication with them. So they know who we are. Like we think about our lists, our email lists, like our tribe. And they know that we have products available. And we're very transparent about that. And another key thing that we do is we only want to, there's a lot of pitching out there to people who aren't a good fit for what you do. And I see like a lot of pitching sales taking place on Twitter, for example, right? One of the platforms. And it's like, most of the people on there are probably not a good fit. So we don't like to pitch people who shouldn't be pitched. And so what we do is get them, we call it the hand raising strategy. We ask them, we say, hey, if you want to hear about this, we have our course opening up, click this link or opt in here to hear more. And we even do that with people on the main email list. We'll segment them off. So that's a key strategy of ours, is really personalizing that communication and not trying to sell people who aren't ready to be sold. So that's a key takeaway.
I think that's great. And so once you've done that and people have put up their hands and they've said, I'm interested, then you sort of go deeper with those people. What do you do with the people who aren't interested yet? Do you sort of not try and, it sounds like you're like, okay, they're not there yet. How do I think about the messaging to those people?
Oh, we just wait for them. Yeah, the way we look at it, we're just going to be constantly trying to provide value, learn about them, speak with them, ask them what they need. And the door is open. And then when they're ready, they can walk through it. We're not going to, you can drag someone through and get that sale with them kicking and screaming, using discounts and countdown timers and all those tactics. And that can work. There's different ways to approach marketing. Our approach is not that. It's like, okay, we're just going to keep educating you, help guide you to the right outcome for you. And when you're ready, this is an option for you. So it's very like low key. It's available when you want it. And that actually will grow your business faster. It sounds counterintuitive, but it's the way it works. It's about relationships.
I love that. It just feels very authentic. It feels like, the people who are going to take your course are going to do it because you're solving a pain point of that course. And you've expressed that. You've had the chance to tell the story in a way that resonates with those people. If only, what I love about what you say is simplicity is key, but often getting to simplicity is hard, right? So
Not
what,
easy. It's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. Like emailing once a week and just kind of telling a story is pretty simple, but it's not easy, and for all sorts of reasons.
what is hardest about it, have you found, for course creators?
One, you have to have pretty good systems, and that's a big takeaway from this interview, is that you need to treat it like a business. You really need to know your numbers, and so you have to have systems in place, and that's tricky for entrepreneurs, because that's not, and speaking as an entrepreneur, that's not our personality type. We're not systems people. We're creative people. We're visionaries. So one thing you can do is bring someone in to help you with that, like an online business manager, an OBM. But yeah, you have to plan a content calendar. You have to generate ideas for the emails. You have to say when you're going to write those emails. You have to schedule those emails and get them out. So there's the logistics side of things. That's one big barrier. The other one is, again, that vulnerability, and also, like, a lot of people have trouble writing as well. Like, and I get that. If you're not, I've always kind of had a knack for it and a love for it. It comes easily to me. And I train people on how to write more quickly and become more comfortable with it. But I realize that's a big barrier too. And you just have to figure out how to solve that, whether it's hiring someone else or taking some courses on your own to get better at writing. So largely those two things. Yeah, the systems and actually getting the writing done.
Absolutely. So this has been amazing. We have one more question, and feel free if people have a few more questions. We have a few more minutes left. But one of the questions, which I think is great, is loved your suggestion to learn the needs of your market. Like Jay, I want to know if you started out with free courses, is that a way to find your market and learn what they need? And that's often one of the questions we get, is should we start with free, or does that actually have a negative impact?
So yeah, if the goal is to figure out what that problem is and what that compelling outcome is, the best thing you can do is actually speak with them on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
There's a saying in Silicon Valley, do things that don't scale. You probably know that one, Candace.
I sure do. Yeah.
So let me give you a quick story on that one. So I did this for my beer tasting course, one of them, a different one. Sorry, not the beer tasting one, another home brewing course. And again, I was my market. So you would think I would know the market really well. And so I was coming out with the product. It was going to be around recipe creation. And I thought that the promise was going to be brew better beer, but through my conversations with my prospects and hearing what they were struggling with, they really wanted a beer that they could call their own. Mm-hmm. They could put their label on in a recipe that they created. And I only discovered that through speaking with them. So it was the difference between brew a great tasting beer versus brew a beer you can truly call your own. And you can almost feel the emotional resonance of that more. And dialing in that language and that positioning, one, that only came really through speaking with them. And two, that made a big difference when it came to selling the thing. It just, converted a lot better, to put it that way.
So powerful. Language is really powerful, and getting those insights. And what it sounds like is you don't necessarily need to do the entire course for free in order to get that insight. You can sort of do, things in advance, like you can have these conversations, you can learn pain points without actually running the course for free as the trial. Am I taking that away in the right way?
Yeah. And then I think their question is more about, is that a good tactic to use, the free course? The idea, free courses are used for lead generation. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But you want to ask the question, what's the best form of lead generation for me? And it might be a course, it might be Zoom calls, it might be a PDF download that you give them. So I would experiment with different things, but look at the free course through that lens of, how do we get people to raise their hand and give us their email address so we can follow up with them, and then just test different tactics to find what's the best one for you. And they all work to a degree.
I think that's really great. And you gave some really good examples on how to learn about the needs of your market. And I think that's ultimately, free courses are okay, maybe, but not the only way, and certainly not like maybe the most time efficient way to sort of figure that out. I thought your sales page example and sort of chatting with people on the phone and understanding what matters is super valuable. So Billy, I could chat with you for the rest of the afternoon on all of these amazing stories you have for how to do this. What would be, to sort of leave this audience, what would be sort of the last thing that you want to kind of share around this process? You know, we have so many amazing course creators who are working, building live cohort-based courses, and they're at different places in their journey. Some have done courses before and are looking to convert to a live and cohort-based format, and others are just really starting out. How would you want to leave this conversation?
Yeah, I would say take an experimental mindset to it all, no matter what stage you're at, and really lead with that idea of finding products for your customers. And don't be too locked into your how. Like, you likely have a desired outcome that you want, and I see a lot of people get really locked into how they want to achieve that. But the feedback that you get might be different from that idea of the how that you have in your mind, and be open to changing the how based on that feedback, because it will get you to that desired outcome and a whole lot faster and with much more success for everyone. So that's what I would say. Be open.
I love it. Be open, experiment, and be authentic. And so on that note, Billy, this was amazing. You are so insightful about how to just make something that often complicates and stresses people out sound really simple and be simple, which I think is really powerful. And so really, thank you so much. We're delighted to have you on our creator sessions. And for those of you who are here this week, we have another amazing guest coming next week, which is Seth Godin, who is truly a pioneer in this format of live cohort-based courses. He's the founder of something called Alt MBA and the Akimbo workshops, and he's written an insane amount of best-selling books on creativity, the creative process, and marketing. So Billy, you're welcome to join us next week too. And thank you all for tuning in. We're super excited to be pioneering the future of learning with all of you.
Thanks, Candace. Yeah, I love what you're doing, and you're a great interviewer. So I really appreciate this.
It's very easy when it's with such great people like yourself. So thank you so much, guys. Have an amazing afternoon. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.